The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Business Channel. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericabusiness.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome to CIO Talk Radio with your host, Sanjo Gall. All comments, views, and opinions expressed on this show are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers. Here's Sanjo Gall.
Good morning and welcome to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. Today's topic is improving the IT planning process. Our guests for today's show are Nicholas Callisto, who is the Vice President and Chief Information Officer with Hovnanian Enterprises. Good morning, Nick. How are you doing?
Good morning, Sanjay. Good.
Good. And we also have John Conley, who is the Deputy CIO with Governor's Office of Information Technology with the State of Colorado. Good morning, John.
Good morning. How are you?
Very good. I just was about to get out to play golf, but it's cloudy and it's about to rain in Chicago. How about you guys?
It's raining in New Jersey as well, so no golf today.
Okay.
Sunny and perfect for golf in Colorado.
All right, we might fly in there after the show. Right, great. So, IT planning process, and this is one area which, while we do all the time, but sometimes it seems we do not have all our ducks in a row, and that's why IT planning process remains only as good as the person who's leading it based on what they've done so far and in their career, and so it's always remained an art. It seems it's not become a science. And given that the speed at which we are changing of our business and correspondingly the IT, it looks like that when we are trying to predict what we want in the future, what we need and what we want, looks like roll of a dice. So why do you think this is the case? Why is it still an art? Nick?
Yeah, I do believe that in this economy, especially, IT needs to be more agile and flexible to support the changing business needs. As a CIO of a large residential home builder, I think I've gotten more practice and experience at this art than I'd like to admit, actually. However, IT planning isn't obviously all art. There's certainly a science to it, and the tumultuous economy isn't really an excuse for avoiding the due diligence to perform proper strategic planning alongside of the business. As difficult as it might be these days, I think a lot of the business executives are avoiding it in place of having just staying afloat. So that seems to be the excuse these days. So I think strategic planning, for the most part, in many enterprises has fallen to the wayside, unfortunately.
So, John, what is your thought on this one?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things when you introduced Nick that I was glad to hear is he's the VP and the CIO, and the reason I like to hear that is I think any good IT plan has to include the business side of the house. And what we do in Colorado essentially is we plan to respond quickly because there is that roll of the dice where the business executive walks in the room and says, I need X, and I don't need it in 12 or 18 months. I need it in 12 to 18 days. And so that's really, it is an art. You have to know what's going on in IT and what's going on in the business and somehow strategically map them together to put together your plan. And if you don't have business sitting at the table, I don't think any strategic IT plan is going to work very well for you.
No, on one side we say that we want to be agile and we want to move quickly with the way the changes come. But at the same time, there's another buzzword which is known as being proactive, and that is always spoken about as an expectation, what we have from the IT as a group and IT leadership. So you cannot be proactive in this case, or even if you try, as you see the things change, you do not have a crystal ball. So how do you eat the cake and have it too? Or can you actually meet their expectations on both sides?
I think you can, but I think it's difficult during where we're at today. I mean, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but I think you got a lot of executives who don't quite yet understand IT as well as they should, and you got a lot of IT guys who have been pigeonholed over the years, who aren't really let into the business and don't understand it well. I think in the next few years here, you're going to get more of the individuals like Nick who are running both sides or helping with both sides, and that's really then when IT will be able to help the business more greatly than it can today. That's not to say that we can't today, but we're not always in the appropriate discussions from our viewpoint.
So, Nick, when you are sitting, in closed doors with your bosses, is your expectation primarily is to react quickly and just keep the lights on, or would you say they would say take us on a global map or take us ahead of our competitors, which requires, of course, some proactive role, some vision, et cetera, et cetera?
I think just recently, with my current company, I think the focus has now been on strategic planning. And I think for the last year and a half, there's been so much, downturn in the economy. Many companies, our peers, alongside of other industries, have, I think neglected strategic planning in favor of just, focusing on and reacting to the market. But I think that's really what we've seen. And I think also companies struggle with how to perform good, solid strategic planning as a whole. I think folks do think it's more of an art than a science, and I just have a different opinion on that.
When we have a lot of activity happening in a business, when the times are good, then we barely get time to take a step back, look at the whole picture, and see if you can tweak a few things. So that's why some say that the best time to plan for growth is the time when it is a downturn, when you don't have as many projects going and you still have some time. So let's do some introspection. Let's do some rescoping of what we are all about, and that's what's going to be on our mind. But then when the downturn happens, then the paranoia hits as well. And when we say we want to spend some time on introspection, they say you don't have that luxury. Keep the lights on. So how is IT leadership dealing with this unique situation here, John?
Well, for the state of Colorado, we're a $250 million operation to keep the lights on, whether the times are good or the times are bad. So we do, and that's just IT. And so we do have, what in this economy, when our tax base is lower, what the things that we're not doing any longer are kind of those long-term special projects. So we have time to look back into ourselves and say, what do we need to do to better our position ourselves when we have to come back out and do all those big projects, that new tax system or that new revenue system or that new driver's license system? What do we need to do internal? And a lot of that is housekeeping, because when you're chugging along, going 100 million miles an hour when times are good, I don't want to say you get careless, but sometimes you do things that are much quicker that you wouldn't have done if you're more thoughtful. So, for instance, I have 39 data centers. When times are good, growing a 40th data center, not that bad of an idea. But now that we're here and we're looking at our expense sheet, we're saying we need to get 39 down to 15, down to 2 here over the course of this next 18 months.
So that means, in fact, when there is less or the fewer resources available, that actually triggers the thought process of going lean. But going lean also means correction, because we could be overzealous in terms of how good does our IT look and how many more toys can we buy. But I think at this time, people are using this as a good time for cleaning up, whether in terms of human resources or in terms of the toys that they have or applications, etc. So is that what the mindset should be when it comes to the IT planning, Nick?
You mean in terms of focusing on cleaning up? I think this is a good time to step back and reflect on the market and what capabilities you have as an IT organization to support the business. But I think the maturity of IT departments really vary greatly when it comes to proper strategic planning. I think most IT leaders look to the rest of the executive team to initiate and even facilitate the strategic planning process, which is a mistake in my mind. For one thing, it's very reactive. You used the word reactive before. And secondly, no one knows IT better than those that are trained in the discipline. So I think that when IT departments wait to get invited to participate in the planning, it is usually met with a clumsy, sort of reactive attempt, and it results in a very poorly defined plan. So I would, as an IT leader, I would encourage all IT leaders to take the time now to initiate the strategic planning process, not wait to get invited. In fact, you might inspire your organization to react by initiating their business plan revitalization at this time as well.
Nick, I think you nailed it in terms of if you're waiting to be invited, you're well beyond late, because the business will think of what they need with or without you in the room, and then when they invite you in, they're telling you what they want. You don't really have an opportunity then to tell them what they need.
I agree, John.
So suppose you have the right type of bosses and people who understand that you got to be invited at the table. How many of our organizations are able to successfully create a very clean, pristine IT plan, strategic IT plan that would not have any sacred cows or the cool tools which are seen by executive management or even sometimes the IT leadership, and they may not truly be necessary. And it's a relative thought too, that what is needed versus what people want is a relative thought. So what do you do with respect to this IT planning process that would prevent these sacred cows or cool but unnecessary tools? John.
What I always do when someone comes up, and shows me the latest gadget that they want, and some of their gadgets are very expensive, I do two things. I pull out the inventory sheet of what we already own and what it can do, and I ask them what their requirements are. Because chances are I have something sitting in my backyard or one of my 39 data centers that's already doing what they want it to do. They just have to readjust their business processes. That's always a fun conversation for both sides of the table there, but it usually works. And then, quite frankly, there's times where they're right. They saw something, it meets their needs, and we got to go out and get it and figure out how to put it into our fleet.
No, that is something incidental you're referring to. When you are sitting down and taking a look at your blueprint, what you did in the past, that's, of course, to be looked at, and we can learn some lessons from there. But if you have a blank sheet of paper in front of you where you want to draw the roadmap for IT for this coming year, for example, and then you want everybody's input, what's that process? Do we have a process which really is written in black and white which people can follow and at least assume that there will be some predictability?
No, we align ourselves to the budget process, but we don't have a separate IT planning process at this time for the state.
Nick, what do you think is available out there, and how much of that do you use or what you've seen other people use?
This year we initiated. I became CIO of Hovnanian last October, and there was no IT strategic plan to really speak of at the time, and so I initiated a program to build one. And first, what we did, we established a governance framework within the company where business proposals and policies can be evaluated by process teams, which are made up of business and IT management across the company, across the U.S. For instance, we have 8 separate committees where each committee is focused on a particular area, such as accounting or sales or construction, and we call these committees process leadership committees, PLCs. And I came from Big Pharma, by the way, and pharmaceutical companies, many of them have a very similar model in mind. That's where I learned that. And the membership is made up of business and IT constituents across the nationwide company, so everyone gets a fair voice in the decisions. So the PLCs are responsible, the process leadership committees are responsible for creating the vision, the mission, and the objectives for their respective area. And since IT management is at the table, as John said earlier, we're able to collaborate with our peers and influence the direction, not unlike any other leader. I tend to think of IT leaders as business leaders, no different than anyone else at the table. We just happen to have a discipline in IT. So I think, Sanjog, you have to have a very disciplined process, and mine happens to follow the COBIT model for building IT governance and strategic plans for the company.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back after these messages. And, Nick, I'd like to ask you a follow-up question that you used, say, COBIT. That's one of the framework, and there are many others. Now, how does an organization, when it is provided with these so-called best practices and or benchmarks that you can build on top of or leverage them, what's the due diligence you can perform that this is the one that should work best for me? Please stay tuned. We'll be right back and discuss.
Up-to-date business and financial news. Call now and get the financial information you need. 866-472-5790. 866-472-5790.
The experts are here.
Voice America Business Network.
Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol, A-V-V-A-L, avol.com. Visit today.
Now, Mrs. Johnson, before we close on your mortgage loan, I want to make sure you remember Mike.
Hi, you can trust me. I'm African American, just like you.
So, here's the low monthly payments and interest rates we promised, and here's where they triple.
The rest of this stuff is just here to make sure that we get your house when you can't pay us back.
What a lovely house.
Predatory lenders are never this easy to spot. Call us at 866-222-FAIR and protect yourself with the facts. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Fair Housing Alliance and the Ad Council.
There are two fundamentals required for business success today. The first is a robust strategy, one that's in sync with the marketplace and has a focus on delivering value. The second business fundamental is talent. The single biggest factor in the sustained health of a company is having the right people in the right roles, doing the right things. Join Michael Couch, the president of Michael Couch & Associates, each week as he explores elements of these two fundamentals on the Voice of Business Growth, Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific, on the Voice America Business Channel.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjog Gall.
Welcome back. So as a follow-up, Nick, the question is, when you started working on this strategic IT planning process or tried to define one, you used COVID as an inspiration and then you drew upon your experience from your past career that you had as IT leader. Then that's what the final strategic IT plan that will come out would be based on those experiences and the people that you have, surrounding you as part of your lieutenants. So, still, it will remain an art. It will still not have a standard that we are following. So, how do you ensure success of such a plan?
Yeah, you said the word inspiration. It certainly gave me inspiration to organize our plan and to develop it in a much more cohesive manner, and to engage the business. I mean, COVID's very good it's a very good model for inspiring leaders to follow a process that may not be ticked and tied completely, but it does give you a good framework. So I use the model to engage our business partners, who at the time were not building a strategic plan, we're not revising it, and we actually initiated that program for not only IT but also for the business to respond to create a more updated model in our contemporary times. So, you can't follow it to the T, but there's like 25 perspectives in COVID. That if you look at those 25 perspectives, it gives you a good start to start modeling your strategic plan around innovation, delivery, support, learning organization. So it's helped me quite a bit.
So, John, you mentioned that you have been able to use the budgeting process to align IT with business. Now, would you say that if we did not have a specific plan, which was being used as a benchmark to derive those numbers which show up on the budget, how do you get approval?
How do I get approval for an IT plan?
IT budget, because if somebody doesn't see a strategic IT plan, a roadmap, and they just see the budget numbers, is the numeric figure that you see on the budget is enough if it is within those expectations that were set, or is there the semantics is also looked at, is where are you going to spend and what is the end result that you're going to get, and how towards the end of the budget year somebody also comes and checks what you delivered given that budget?
Yeah, so it's both. It's both the numbers and the narrative associated with the numbers, and what we're going to accomplish with those numbers. You know, and I'm sure it's this way to a degree in the private sector. In the public sector, we're dealing with a budget cycle that's 12 to 18 months away, and so the business really needs to determine with IT on those IT initiatives what they want to get done, how much it's going to cost. And then we have to go ask the legislature, a board of directors of 100 in Colorado, for approval. And they ask, we have a citizen legislature, and what I mean by that, it's only in session for 5 months out of the year. And so we have a short window to go in, plead our case and our initiative, and then get a yes or a no. And then at the end of that 5 months, we got to go back in and say where we're at with the projects from last year and where we're getting ready to go with the projects from a year from now. And so, but they do ask all the questions around, you know, what are you doing? What's the end result? How does this improve the business? If it's going to make me more efficient, what does that mean in terms of FTE or employees? Do I collect more revenue? Is it a loss leader? Those type of things. But it is, I think, for a state such as Colorado, everything kind of orbits around the budget.
So would you, as an IT leader yourself, feel more comfortable if you had something besides budget to help you show the direction step by step as you go along in a given year? As an IT plan, I mean, that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, I mean, would I feel more comfortable? Yes, and so what we're doing here is we are building a parallel but separate process for IT planning that'll start about 30 days before the budget process. And so then that'll still allow the budget numbers to be delivered per their calendar, but we'll have kind of a 30-day advance window where we're thinking about what we want to accomplish as an IT organization. I think with any IT organization, there's two sides of the house. There's keeping the lights on, so I got non-discretionary spend that's really easy. And then there's what you're talking about, the strategic thought process of what are we going to bring to bear, what are the businesses going to bring to bear or need in the next 18 months that I have to start planning on now.
So, Nick, when you are building this strategic IT plan, and this is just the first, I would say, the first iteration of the same. And what is your dream strategic IT plan that you would have tried to reach to, and what were the stumbling blocks as you started putting this together? How far are you from it, and or what are the things which prevented you from getting your dream strategic IT plan in the first place?
Okay, so we're very close to, I'd say we're about 75% into it right now. And how we started it was we took the balanced scorecard approach, the Kaplan approach, where we took the business goals and objectives and we classified them to, 4 categories: financial, customer, learning, and internal process. So now the business objectives are categorized in 4 simple categories, and then we took the COVID model of 25 perspectives, and we worked with the business within the process leadership committees I mentioned earlier to define the specific IT objectives that would help us address those 4 overall overarching business goals, right? So that's the model we used. I also I conducted a benchmarking study. I mean, there's a lot of resources you can use to help you with strategic planning. You can look at industry analysts such as Gartner and Forrester, et cetera. But I also did something really unique. I don't know if John has some experience with this himself. We did a benchmarking study with 15 large home builders, okay, with their IT departments. And we asked about 30 questions around their IT spend. So John talked about budgeting. I have clear information on what the large home builders are spending on IT for each employee, overall, capital versus expense. I've got answers on where they're focusing on in terms of innovation over the next 5 years. So that was very helpful. That was very, very unique. And that was a challenge. You asked about challenges. That was a challenge, just putting that together and collecting it. But it was very helpful. I also, other challenges we faced were, getting folks to think of strategic planning very seriously, particularly in these times, and be opportunistic in building it now to help us, focus on the right priorities, Sanjog, over the next 3 years. It's a 3-year strategic plan.
So if this were to be looked at as a release 1, would you call it a beta candidate, or would you call it as a release 1, and you would have luck for it to become the release 5 eventually, which will have everything that you ever wanted? And what's the delta between the two?
Well, I'm going to call it release 1. It is what it is, and it's pretty comprehensive. So far, it's about 50 pages at a detail level. Okay. And then it sums up to an executive overview within 7 pages or so. So it is, but I don't see, strategic planning isn't a one-time event, right? John mentioned budgeting earlier. We do budgeting 4 times a year. We recalibrate our budget 4 times a year. So the strategic planning plan will be the backdrop to that budgeting process, of course. So each quarter we're measuring where we are with our initiatives for non-discretionary and discretionary spend, and what in the market has changed in terms of conditions that will have us recalibrate our strategic plan. So it's not a one-time event that you do every couple of years. It has to become a natural part of your work day that you're always measuring against the strategic plan. Jack Welch often said that, at the end of the day, he was absolutely exhausted from talking about his vision, his mission, and objectives with GE employees. He couldn't speak anymore. And that was a successful day for him because he kept pumping out what his vision was. And I look at the strategic planning process as an everyday event.
So, question for you, John. If you had a set of objectives, which I'm sure you have with respect to IT, and you're trying to tie these objectives back to the financial objectives and the business strategic objectives of your state, who comes and validates what you created? Because you're, of course, expected that you tie very closely to the financial and business objectives. Mm-hmm. But once you're done with your deliverable, is there somebody outside of your group who is poking holes in there?
Yes. I mean, not only do I have the governor of the state of Colorado saying, are you delivering on my vision, but I also have the other executive directors of the various departments. We, as an IT organization in the state of Colorado, are primarily a service organization to public safety, corrections, transportation. And so when we put together a product or an application for them, they're coming back and double-checking and making sure it's having the intended outcome that they wanted to see. Nick mentioned earlier a backdrop or a constant communication. Our strategic plan that we have in place is kind of that backdrop curtain. I mean, we don't have anything that's as specific as we're going to deliver this application in the next 12 to 18 months, but we have more of the backdrop or the column pillar perspective that, what we're doing any product we put in place needs to secure and protect the information, and we need to effectively manage IT projects. That's kind of our strategic plan. We have 5 pillars, but it's not as specific as what applications we're unrolling. So to answer your question directly, though, all the VPs or the presidents of their respective departments sit across from our desks and make sure that what we've delivered is what they needed.
Do they semantically understand it for them to be able to successfully validate? Because some portions of that may be very IT-centric, or is it truly rolled up into a business?
Yeah, that's a good question. They understand the business aspect of it quite well, and then each department has their own chief information officer that serves just the department and reports into myself and the state CIO. So they're then the translator from the IT semantic to the business semantic for that particular department, that niche.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back after these messages and look at the value of, while you're creating the strategic IT plan, or if at least you are attempting to, how closely should you also be working on building corresponding tactical and operational plan? Because, strategic IT plan could be a 30,000 feet view of what you're trying to accomplish. But when rubber hits the road and you're trying to really validate in true sense, what is developed is a set of operational and or technical objectives and or plan. That's what's going to tell whether we were in the right direction in the first place. But is that also being done as part of our process? Please stay tuned. We'll be right back and discuss.
Whether the market's up or down, or if you're looking to improve your portfolio, our experts are ready to talk to you. Call now toll free 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Voice America Business Network.
Do you need directions to solid financial future? If so, the Money Answer Show with Jordan Goodman will provide you with a roadmap to making smart money decisions in every area of your personal finances. Join Jordan every Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern for the Money Answer Show on the Voice America Business Channel. Learn how and where to get the best deals on mortgages, cars, and insurance. Find out the best ways to save for college and retirement. Get out of debt, improve your credit rating, and save on your taxes. The Money Answer Show with Jordan Goodman will provide you with great tips on investment opportunities in real estate, stocks, annuities, and other investment vehicles. That's the Money Answer Show with Jordan Goodman on the Voice America Business Channel every Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Adding fractions is nothing.
For real?
Look, these are denominators. You multiply this one so that it's the same as that, then you add them up.
Man, that's easy.
Charles Bennett dreamed of returning to the old neighborhood as a teacher, but without money for college, only half of his dream came true. He's back in the old neighborhood.
Well, enough math. I gotta deliver these sandwiches.
Please support the United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste. A message from the UNCF and the Ad Council.
Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol, A-V-V-A-L, avol.com. Visit today.
From the boardroom to you, Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjo Gal.
Welcome back. So while we are trying to develop a good, rock-solid strategic IT plan, or at least attempting to do so, what about the operational and or tactical plans? Because they are the ones which when are seen and validated against the strategic IT plan is what's going to tell whether we will be successful, what we plan for or not. Because otherwise, we just have a good strategic IT plan. It could be interpreted 20 different ways, and God knows what's going to happen. So Nick, do you want to share how you are going to, what's your plan with respect to now that you have this good-looking strategic IT plan? What's your next step with respect to making these tactical and or operational plans, and what's your inspiration for that?
Well, let me tell you about what the product is today, and maybe help with defining that. When creating an IT strategic plan, I believe that, and we've conducted ourselves is IT leaders need to go the extra distance and lay out the year-over-year objectives that support the plan. And I can't really speak from a government perspective that John has, but in private industry, typically you want to lay out in a lot more detail the objectives that support that plan. And the key is not making that a separate exercise, right? But that has to be an intrinsic part of the planning process. And it's not enough to write, for example, we will create an IT disaster program protecting our most critical assets. I mean, that's a real high-level, fluffy kind of statement. You have to then articulate the precise objectives that support that plan. And, the old HR performance management planning acronym, make the objectives SMART, They have to be specific, measurable, action-oriented, results-oriented, and time-based. That's how we build the objectives. So, you have to build KPIs around that too, which I can get to in a moment. But, it's hard work, and you need to spend, prepare to spend a few months building the plan the first time around, and then you just recalibrate as business conditions change. And, contrary to popular belief, it's really not a one-time event. And you have to have the KPIs. To sustain this plan now, Sanjay, you have to create the key performance indicators that measure the success of those objectives against the plan. And, your annual performance objective planning exercise should really be a copy and paste from your strategic plan. You know you did your plan well when you can copy and paste into your annual objectives.
John, do you feel that you have, while you create the budget, with respect to the strategic IT plan, or as you can say, for the most part, a substitute of a strategic IT plan, where do you flesh out the operational and technical guidelines, and that's what tells you that your budgeting was indeed done in the right fashion?
I think that's a difficult thing for any state, and Colorado as well. Governor Ritter is definitely getting us to the point where we're using KPIs, key performance indicators, and more measurable results. But until we kind of finish out that vision, we don't really have key performance indicators. That's something governments across the Continental are really lacking. The standouts are Maryland and Washington State. They've done some great things with KPIs. And making sure they're measuring their programs in terms of, I know Washington State, they measure how long it takes them to respond to a 911 call for the state patrol, and then their governor sits around, and if it's not within what her goal was, she asks why and what they can do to improve it. And IT's at the table when they're asking those questions, see if there's anything that IT can help to improve those response times through the messaging switch or public safety radio systems. We in Colorado don't have that, and that's something we're working toward under our current administration. But we do have our operational and tactical plans, and those are geared toward what projects we have to deliver. And really, I would say we're in the infancy stage where what we're measuring is, are we on time? Are we on budget? Is it delivering? The end user is accepting the product, but we haven't advanced or matured enough to get to where Nick and his corporation are, unfortunately.
So now, with respect to your inspirations that you got from a document or a methodology that was proposed by COVID, is there any other source which you use to further vet your strategic IT planning process and the plan itself? Nick?
Yeah, aside from collaborating with the internal process teams I mentioned earlier and functional heads and system user groups, we have user groups for all of our different IT products. IT leaders need to tune into what's happening in their business by reading, the business itself, by reading industry journals and online resources, and perhaps even attending, business industry conferences. And I think the publications and the seminars, are great resources to learn about market trends and what the competition in your industry is doing. And then from an IT perspective, Sanjog, I recommend that leaders subscribe to credible industry research analysis such as Gartner and Forrester, as I mentioned earlier, to gain insight into technology trends. Free periodicals like CIO Magazine are helpful, but they offer some insight, but the analysis is generally very light. I use those magazines for almost like a newspaper to find out what's going on in the daily news. But you can't be too internally focused, and I think some leaders get stuck in that mode of too focused on the internal operations of the business and not spending time to look outside of their company to get inspired.
Now, with respect to credibility of those resources that you're talking about, there have been, rumors about them also being rigged in some cases. I'm not sure. But then, so who does an IT leader go to? It's kind of lonely up there.
Yeah, you have to look at more than one. That's my experience. I know John probably shares that. You have to look at as many. I'm an avid reader. That's why I learn. Everyone learns differently. I learn more from reading than I do attending a conference or sitting in a class. So you have to look at Forrester, Gartner, CIO Magazine, Information World, Computer World. Just, saturate yourself in information. And when you're at the point of information overload, that's good. You want to be relentless at learning. You continue to have to invest in yourself.
Yeah, I'm with Nick. I mean, you have to read every piece of information that comes across your desk, and then you have to talk to Red with all of your cohorts across the nation. And luckily, in this day and age, with the associations of NASCIO, NASBO, NASCIO is the National Association of State CIOs, the State Budget Officers is NASBO, but also social networking, LinkedIn, those type of things, the wikis. I probably have more of those that I go to and say, hey, I just read this about, X state. I'll call that CIO and say, I know how publications go. Let's talk about what you're really finding out here. And that's the vetting that I do. And I'm a young guy, but when I'm a little bit old school, and that if I can reach across and shake someone's hand and have them tell me it's working, that's credible.
Now, it brings up an important point, and I'm sure the technology marketers would love to hear your point of view. There's so much of data out there, and even if you're an avid reader, I'm sure you could soak up all the information, but still there'll be more left. What do you exactly pick to find that this is a credible source for inspiration and information that you would leverage for your own IT planning and or decision making?
Who?
John?
I mean,
so you as a CIO, you as an IT leader, you are going for external sources as well, and plus, of course, leveraging your internal staff. But for looking at the outside set of sources, because when we talk to organizations, they are going crazy building white papers and other form of information, and there's an overload that's available there. What do you read and or listen to before you to make a decision and get information and or inspiration from primarily?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the associations. It's the people that I can really talk to about a white paper. And so the silver bullet for me are, the colleagues across the 50 states, those state CIOs, calling them and talking to them about what they're seeing in real life. I enjoy a good white paper, and that helps me get a foundation of where I want to go. But when I have to make the decision, it's 5 or 6 of the colleagues that I call and ask them, for their opinions and see what their successes and failures have been. And unfortunately, it's not any publication.
Would that be a vendor-driven white paper or vendor-written white paper, or through an agnostic, vendor-neutral source?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, it really does on what I'm looking for. There's a lot of vendors out there who put white papers together that, yes, are serving their needs of their sales. But it's also, if you strip out their name, it doesn't necessarily mean just because it came from a vendor that if you just skip over or don't say their name that the white paper is still not honest. And so it just depends on what the solution is.
Nick?
Yeah, I find it interesting, that some of these magazines that we referenced earlier have a section called advertorial. I don't know if you noticed that recently,
Yeah.
And it's really well done. If you don't pay attention that it's an advertorial, you wouldn't even note it because it looks like a regular article. So when you start hearing from 7 or 8 different sources that server virtualization is a key trend, you start paying attention to it, right? And it's not really a fad; it's a reality. We actually saved. We retired 90 servers last year. We saved close to $500,000 by displacing those servers and doing server virtualization. And we waited. We stuck our toe in it originally, and little by little, you learn about the value of that. Now something like Twitter, it's brand new. You're hearing more about it. There's a lot of passion out there. We're going to stick our toe in that one, not just jump into it, because there's other issues that come along with Twitter in terms of just confidentiality, etc. So you have to, as I said earlier, not only you have to read a lot, but John mentioned it very articulately, said that you have to spend time with your peers and network with your peers and find out how they're experiencing some of these newer technologies.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back after these messages and see who all you actually involve in your strategic IT planning process. And ideally, you would love to have the whole organization, at least your IT crew, and with the specific stakeholders from the business side all get involved, have the 100% consensus. And then that's what the final result will be, a pristine strategic IT plan. Reality says something else. You'll never get to a strategic IT plan if you try to go for the consensus. So how do you eat the cake and have it too? Please stay tuned. We'll be right back and discuss.
Whether the market's up or down, or if you're looking to improve your portfolio, our experts are ready to talk to you. Call now toll free 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Voice America Business Network.
Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol, A-V-V-A-L, avol.com. Visit today.
Let's sing that new song. My music track from my modem jack plays MP3s, and I download fast. I read the bits on the microchips, and I burn all my favorite hits.
By the 6th grade, many girls lose interest in technology, but parents can help keep them updated. Go to girlsgotech.org.
A public service announcement brought to you by Girl Scouts of USA and Ad Council.
Self-leadership is more important than corporate leadership. In the hustle and bustle world we live in, we need to be reminded that in all failures and successes, we are the common denominators. Each week, let Daniel Gutierrez help bring you the tools you need to manage self-leadership, resulting in self-success. Make your mark in your industry. Make sure you listen to Right Here, Right Now, every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Business Channel.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjog Gall.
Welcome back. So we were talking about that ideal situation where the whole IT crew and selected members of the business community or stakeholders join the gang and try to come up with a 100% consensus of what the plan should look like, and that's what will give you the best plan you could ever get. Now, easier said than done. We would never get a plan if we had 100% consensus approach. So do we go with a selective consensus model and know that this is not a 100% pure, pristine plan that we're dealing with? John?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't go for consensus. I think the state CIO would say he doesn't go, with the mindset of 100% consensus. We go for input. We want a lot of people from a variety of backgrounds to have input into the plan. But essentially, at the end of the day, it's him, the governor, and myself that are responsible and accountable for putting the plan together and making sure that the plan's coming to life. And so, if you're planning, kind of what we talk about here, if you're planning by committee, that's good. If you're thinking you can execute by committee, that's going to be much more difficult in actuality. And so, we seek a lot of input, and then it's our job to coalesce that information, put it in a plan that's workable and flexible because we're doing a 4-year plan, and then but we're the ones ultimately accountable for it. And so if there's nothing that we don't agree with in the plan, it's not going in there.
Rick?
Well, it depends on what part of the plan we're speaking of. We're talking about the business application initiatives, the innovation around our sales and marketing software platform or a homeowner service platform. We use the governance committees, the process leadership committees I mentioned earlier, to vote on what they would like in the current, to build out the current application portfolio, enhance it, or add more to it. So we go with a 2/3 vote for each of the committees to vote on what features they'd like to have and what new products they'd like to have, right? So that's more of a consensus-based, 2/3 vote type of model. When it comes to pure infrastructure, like WAN acceleration hardware and software, we're not really going to the business for that, right? We have a board that weighs in on terms of our budget, but we're not going to ask the business, hey, would you mind if we invest in, riverbed technology for WAN acceleration? I mean, it would be pointless. So we do that with a technical council within IT.
Now, when do you know when your process is going nowhere and you have to take a step back? Sometimes like we do with the projects, any project, if it's a sinking ship, so you cut your losses and or restart. Do you see a problem with any of these strategic IT planning processes where you have to pull back and start all over? John?
I mean, I think we know what's going wrong when we're seeking that input, and a lot of people are looking around the room saying, I don't get it, I don't understand it. And if you keep, Nick earlier said he's a reader and he learns a lot by reading. I'm visual, and if I can't draw it out and say how we're going to get there, then something's not working on a whiteboard or a transparency, something of that. And so it's kind of back to your point earlier. It's the art of it. You kind of got to be able to look around the room and read the body language. And is it sinking in? Are people getting it? Are they able to tie it back to their business objectives? Is there the dollars for it, or is it too abstract? And if it's too abstract, it's not going well.
Nick, what have you seen? Have you seen in your process of building this plan any time when it was coming close to where you said, you know what, I have to pull back, get started again?
Sure, and in other experiences as well. I mean, if you're not getting the support you need from your business partners, I'm not saying I'm getting it now, which is fine, but in other industries, I've seen that happen. If you're not getting the support from the business partners, you'll end up with a technical plan, right? And that is not aligned with any sort of business priorities. So the level of executive support is a good barometer for determining the success rate of the plan. Also, if you're finding that you're creating strategies and objectives that introduce many new technologies, but you're having a difficulty aligning them with business needs, you probably have folks in your department, right, John, that are more interested in playing with new technology than they are supporting the business, right? So you got to be careful of that. And I think finally, if you're having difficulty creating clear KPIs, then you probably haven't set smart objectives, as I said earlier, because they aren't measurable enough. If you can't copy and paste, you probably don't have a very solid plan that's going to be, something you're going to use as a barometer and asset test for all the different business proposals that are going to come your way in the future. We do an annual report, an IT annual report here at Hovnanian, and what I'll do this year, when I do this year's annual report, now that we have a strategic plan in place, I'm going to measure my success and how easy it is for me to write that report this year, because it should come easier, right, Sanjay? If I've done an effective strategic plan and I've got objectives that are going against that plan, my annual report should be a very easy document to build.
On behalf of the show and our listeners, I'd really like to thank you, Nick and John, for sharing your thoughts about how can an organization improve upon its IT planning process. Thank you so much, Sanjay. I enjoyed it. Nice meeting you, John, as well.
And nice meeting you, Nick, and thank you for having us on the show, Sanjay.
Thank you so much again. Now, as we know that IT is trying to help business, and for that, it is essential that IT has its own act together with respect to where it is heading and what it intends to accomplish. So for the most part, a strategic IT planning till date seems to be an art form versus a predictable scientific process. So as a result, what we will see is going to be predictable, what is going to come out of those related activities in terms of operations and tactical planning that we do. There's no doubt that IT leadership attempts to do its best. However, the results required beyond their experience and foresight, and it should be given the due attention to. So is that happening? Do we have a formal strategic IT planning process that we strictly adhere to and really are able to get the right results. Please send us your thoughts to views@ciotalkradio.com. That is views@ciotalkradio.com. Thank you again for listening to CIO Talk Radio. This is Sanjog Aul, your talk show host. Till next week, take care and God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. Join Sanjog Aul next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Pacific for another hour of CIO Talk Radio.
Thanks again for listening to the preceding program, brought to you on the Voice America Business Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericabusiness.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the preceding program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.